Hey, welcome back to Horsepower and a little heads-up tech segment we're calling Bolt Basics. There are hundreds of bolts and studs in a typical engine. Stands to reason, then, that using the best quality fasteners, proper torque specs, and lube are critical to keeping everything together, especially for high-performance use and abuse. Of course, there's a lot more to it than knowing righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. In fact, what happens between the first twist of the bolt and that last click is often a mystery. All metals have some elastic properties, which means they can be compressed or, more importantly, stretched. When a bolt or stud is stretched, it has a natural tendency to return to its original length. That's why when you torque one down, you're trying to stretch it just enough to add a clamping force that'll keep it in place. This is also known as preload. Maintaining and achieving a bolt's proper clamp load is all about overcoming friction, and even ARPs can't do that without the right lube. There are a lot of choices out there, but using some of their studs and this strain gauge, we're going to test some different results. First, good old motor oil on the threads of this ARP stud and nut, which has a torque value of 125 foot-pounds. So when the torque wrench clicks, the gauge needle should be at 18,000 pounds. And on the first cycle, we're at 15,000, not enough. And eventually we do hit the target, but only after several cycles. Next, with a new identical stud and nut, the ever-popular Moly lube. And once again, when the torque wrench says we're there, we're really 3,000 pounds under. Several cycles later, we're at 19 and a half, about 1,500 pounds over the target. This is a lube commonly called peanut butter. It's used by a lot of top fuel race teams who torque their stuff down once, make a 5-second pass, and then tear the engine down before the next run. I can see why they use it. It torques down at 18,000 pounds the first time. However, it's not recommended for street strip engines because on each follow-up cycle, the gauge goes up several thousand pounds above the target. On about the 7th cycle, we're all the way up to 30,000 pounds. Uh-oh, that wasn't the torque wrench. Now let's see what we got here. Now that sound was obviously threads letting go inside this nut, and it's not going anywhere. Imagine if this was in your engine. You'd be screwed, no pun intended. Finally, ARP's Ultra Torque Lube, made without moly or metals, and formulated to achieve the target preload on the first torque cycle with repeatability. Plus, it prevents seizing and galling on threads. On the first torque sequence, we're at 18.5, which is right in the ballpark. But ARP claims Ultra Lube will maintain that preload level within 5% on all following torque cycles. And it does on the second and the third, and for 2 more cycles before we call it quits. Other recent tests measuring rod bolts stretched with different lubes revealed pretty much the same results we got. So, while using quality fasteners and the proper torque specs are critical, it's the lube that lets you hit that target preload and hit it consistently. Today, this ARP Ultra Torque was the only one that really made the grade.
You're watching Horsepower.